Hello friends, today I am going to start a new series on economics. While watching these videos, I would recommend you to also read Introduction to Macroeconomics along the side, then watch the video. And if you come across any doubt, even after watching the video, if you have any doubts, then please write those doubts in the comment section. I will try to answer those doubts. Let's start with our first topic today, which is types of goods. Now, you are very well aware what are goods and what are services. It's very simple to understand what are goods and what are services, right? But still, it becomes important for us to understand this because other higher concepts like the concept of GDP, the concept of GVA, the concept of goods and service tax are dependent on our understanding of what are goods, what are services, what are intermediate goods, what are final goods, what are capital goods, what are consumer durables, what are consumer non-durables. So all these different types of goods have to be understood and have to be differentiated from each other in order to understand the concepts like GDP and GVA, right? Let us start by understanding what is the simple definition of good and service. So if you see here, goods are tangible, services are intangible. This is very simple. Goods are something that you can touch, that you can see, right? That you can easily transport from one place to other place. For example, the laptop that you are watching this video on, or the mobile phone that you are using, the buildings that you see, and the bed, chair, cot, the pen that you are holding, and the chair on which you are sitting, all these things which are visible and which are tangible in character are called goods, right? They are goods. What are services? Services are intangible in nature. What is the meaning of intangible? Intangible means something which we cannot see or we cannot touch, yet it is being delivered from one place to the other place, or from the seller to the purchaser. For example, let's say you are in a hospital. In the hospital, doctor is giving you advice on your health. So that advice that doctor is giving, you cannot see it or you cannot actually carry it, but you can feel it. You can understand it, right? So that advice is called service. Similarly, if you go to a bank, banking advice is given to you. You do banking activities. Those banking activities are intangible in character. So those things which are intangible in character are called services, and goods are tangible in nature, right? Now, in economics, it is extremely important to understand what are intermediate goods. If I were to simply define what are intermediate goods, then you can say that intermediate goods are raw materials, or they can also be called as inputs. So these are raw materials or inputs which are used in the production of other goods. For example, if you can see here, wheat is being used to make dough, right? Now in this, wheat becomes intermediate good, meaning it is being used in the preparation of dough. And now this dough is being used in the preparation of bread. Now in the preparation of bread, dough becomes an intermediate good. In the bread, both dough and wheat are involved. So both these become intermediate good in the manufacturing of bread, right? So this is a very simple and very basic understanding of what are intermediate goods, right? In the next section, we will try to differentiate between intermediate goods and final goods, and we will try to see what is that which differentiate an intermediate good from a final good. Before that, let us see what are final goods. In the previous slide, we saw that bread was made from dough, and we called dough as an intermediate good, right? Similarly, dough was made from wheat, and we called wheat an intermediate good. Now, what do we call this bread which was made from dough as well as wheat? In this bread, both wheat as well as dough are involved as intermediate goods, but now this bread is a final good. Okay, now this washing machine which is being used at your home for washing clothes is a final good. Now this laptop that or desktop that you're watching this video on is a final good. This coffee machine that you're using at your home for making tasty coffee in the morning is a final good. So let us understand the definition of a final good. Such an item that is meant for final use. This is a very important term. Final goods are meant for final use and will not pass through any more stages of production or transformation is called a final good. So in this definition, two terms are important, and these terms will help us differentiate between a final good and an intermediate good. What are those two key terms? One is that a good which is called a final good must be used for consumption, means it is meant for final use. Second important, it must not pass through any more stages of production or transformation. It is also called as it must not pass through, or it must be out of active economic flow. What is active economic flow and what does it mean? We will see in the next section. So this is the basic meaning of final good. Let us go to the next section. Now the question arises, how do we differentiate an intermediate good from a final good? Is it in the look of a good, that by seeing that we can say, okay, this is intermediate good and this is final good? Or is it something else which differentiates an intermediate good or an input or raw material from the final good? So let us understand this. Okay, an intermediate good or final good, not based on how it looks. It is not how a good looks which differentiates it from intermediate or final good, but its end use, its economic nature. So I will give you two criteria which will help you to differentiate between an intermediate good from a final good. First criteria, as we saw in the previous slide, is what is its end use. Second criteria is whether that good is in active economic flow. We will understand this with a simple example. If you grow this wheat and use it for personal consumption, now what this wheat will become for you? It will be final good for you. But if you also sell some of that wheat to a person who is making dough, now what will this wheat be called? This wheat will be called intermediate good in the production of this dough. The wheat that you consumed is a final good for you. The wheat that you sold, that is economic flow. The wheat that you sold is being used to make this dough is actually an intermediate good in the manufacturing of this dough. Similarly, if you purchase this dough and make chapatis out of it and you ate it, it became a final good for you. But if you sell this dough to a bread manufacturer and this bread manufacturer is selling this bread to someone else, then this dough becomes an intermediate good for the manufacturing of this bread. So basically, what is the end use? You have to first see what is the end use. Is it being used for personal consumption or is it being used to generate economic activity? Now we understood what is the difference between an intermediate good and a final good, right? But final goods are of different types. There are broadly two classifications which are made in final goods. If you read your Introduction to Macroeconomic NCERT, there two classifications have been given. First is consumption goods. Second is capital goods. Consumption goods are what? Consumption goods are those goods which are consumed by the people over a period of time. There are some consumption goods which are consumed immediately and there are some which are consumed over a long period of time. For example, a washing machine, a fridge, an AC, these are called consumer durables. Other consumption goods which are final in character, which are non-durable, they are called consumer non-durables. But there are some final goods which are extremely important and they are called capital goods. Now what are capital goods? Capital goods are those goods, first, they are used in further production of other goods and services, right? Then second important characteristic of capital goods are, these are essential for increasing the productivity of the economy. Now let us understand some more things about capital goods. Do you think these consumption goods, the manufacture of these consumption goods like AC, fridge, television, laptop, mobile phone or the pen, notebook, whatever you are using right now, all these goods and services that you are using, are they produced by some other machines, right? They are manufactured by some other machines. And those machines which are used in the manufacture of all these goods that you are using are called capital goods. Now tell me, any economy which has those capital goods which are used for production of other goods, surely that economy will be very strong economy, right? Because it will be producing a lot of goods and services by itself, right? Such an economy which has a lot of capital goods will be a bit of self-sufficient economy, right? Meaning it does not have to depend on other countries for a lot of goods and services. It can produce its own goods. So now this is one of the reasons why during second 5-year plan, which was also called as Mahalanobis plan, emphasis was given on the production of capital goods, or it was also called as heavy industries, right? So because India wanted to become self-sufficient in the production of goods and services, and self-sufficiency or self-reliance was also one of the objectives of 5-year plans. There were 3 objectives of 5-year plans. One was growth, second was equity, and third important objective was self-sufficiency, and you cannot have self-sufficiency without a proper strong base of capital goods. So capital goods are those goods which is used in the production of other goods and services. For example, machinery, essential for increasing productivity. Now capital goods does not mean machinery only. Capital goods also means fixed assets and fixed capital like roads, ports, waterways, highways, buildings, vehicles used for transportation of goods and services. Okay, so all these things increase the productivity of economy, right? So a country or a economy which invests in capital goods becomes stronger eventually, right? So that is the meaning of capital goods. Now capital goods are also final goods. Now one important thing that you have to understand is that if you look at intermediate goods and capital goods, then you will see that both intermediate goods and capital goods are used as inputs in the production of other goods. But that is the only similarity between intermediate goods and capital goods. Both are used as inputs. For example, if you are using a machine to produce, let's say, spoons and utensils, so that machine is acting as input in the production of spoons and utensils, right? So intermediate goods, for example, you are using metal as raw material for the production of spoons and utensils. So that metal is also acting as input. So this is the only similarity between an intermediate good and capital good. Apart from this, there is no other similarity. Why? Because intermediate good is not a final good. Capital goods are final goods. First thing. Second thing, during the manufacture of any good, intermediate goods get consumed. This is a very important character of intermediate goods. They get consumed, or value addition happens on intermediate goods and their character changes. For example, wheat is now converted into bread. So can you see wheat there? No. Wheat has converted into bread because of character change which happens because of value addition. Okay, but capital goods don't get consumed in the manufacture of final goods. They remain like that. However, one important concept that we will study in the next section is that depreciation. Capital goods also need replacement over a period of time. For example, any machinery has a lifespan. After its lifespan, it must be replaced, right? In order to replace that machinery which undergoes wear and tear, a concept has been invented called depreciation. This we will see in the next section. So these are some of the examples of consumer durables and non-durables. You see here AC, it is a consumer durable. Television, it is a consumer durable. These breads, these are consumer non-durables. These items, these are also consumer non-durables. Now here you can see this machineries. These are called capital goods. They are also final goods, but unlike AC or TV, these are used for the manufacturing of other goods and services, right? Hence these are called capital goods. And as I told, not only machinery but roads, highways, bridges, buildings, vehicles, and these machinery, all these which help in the improvement of productivity of an economy are also included in capital goods or fixed capital or fixed asset. Now an important concept which is given in your textbook is that capital formation or gross or net investment in economy. The term investment, which is commonly used in economics section of the Hindu newspaper or any other newspaper, normally refers to investment in share markets or investment in other assets, right, for personal consumption and all. But if economists use the word capital formation or gross investment in economy, what they are referring to is what percentage of our GDP is being invested to manufacture capital goods. As I told previously, capital goods form the backbone of economy. Without capital goods, a country may not be stronger eventually, right? For example, a certain percentage of GDP is being invested for the construction of roads and highways, then our country is improving economically because roads and highways are going to increase the productivity of our economy, and that is what capital formation means, right? So that part of our final output that comprises of capital goods constitutes gross investment of an economy. Now what constitutes capital goods? As we discussed, machines, tools, buildings, office spaces, storehouses, infrastructure like roads, bridges, airports, jetties. But previously I gave you a concept called depreciation. These capital goods, they are also similar to consumer durables because they are durable final goods. However, one important difference that I told you was consumer durables are used for personal consumption, capital goods are used for further production of other goods and services. But they also undergo wear and tear and need replacement, right? So in order to account for the wear and tear that is happening in capital goods on year basis, economists have introduced a concept called depreciation. In order to simply define depreciation, you can say that the cost of replacing worn out capital goods every year is called depreciation, and you have to deduct this from the output of our economy. For example, if you calculate GDP, then you have to deduct depreciation in order to get clear picture of our economy, and that measure is called net domestic product. Similarly, if we calculate gross investment, we have to deduct depreciation in order to get net investment. So this net investment is net capital formation. So I hope you have understood what is gross investment or net investment and capital formation. Capital formation is extremely essential, and if you understand what is capital formation and importance of capital formation or net investment in economy, then it will be easy for you to understand what is ICOR. ICOR is investment to capital output ratio, and it will also be easy to understand what is Harrod-Domer model of economy. So this is all for today's class. I hope you have understood what is an intermediate good, what is a final good, and in final good what is a consumption good and capital good. If you have any doubts and any queries regarding these concepts, then please write them in comment section. I will try to answer them as early as possible. Second, please subscribe and like this video and share it as far as possible so that everyone gets benefit out of this. Okay, so until next time, bye bye, study well and take care.